that one.
Okay, got it. I'm good. Hello.
Hi, Joe's here.
Hi, Joe. My name's Dan Casuccio. I'm one of the board members of the HDA.
Okay, hi Dan. Good to meet you.
Yes. We're the only ones on?
I think so.
Oh, boy.
We're a few minutes early. We're a few minutes early.
Yeah. So
I did send a draft to, I just had Anna and Paul and Aaron on my email list, so I just sent a draft just a few minutes ago to maybe help with the discussion. I didn't expect it to be read by now, but I've just got this material earlier today, so I've thrown something together so we'd have something for discussion, and I can summarize it, once the other callers are on the line.
Good. It sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good. Hamilton's taking a beating right now, Joe, with the amount of homelessness and displaced tenants, and it seems like we're kind of been a dumping ground for a 50-mile radius or something. And the optics make the average citizen think that licensing is going to cure that problem.
Yeah, I know. And you'll see in the submissions that I've prepared, if anything, it's going to aggravate the problem because it's going to force people back out into the streets, either through economic eviction, and you'll hear the details of that, or really by landlords, small landlords getting out of the business.
Absolutely.
It won't be hard to sell a duplex to somebody who wants to convert it to a single-family home, fix it all up, and sell it.
100%. And there's many. Hamilton has one of the highest rates of renters in Ontario, in Hamilton.
Yeah.
And that's because we have a lot of small multi-unit dwellings, like duplexes, triplexes, 4, 6-unit type of thing. We're almost one of the capitals of Ontario in that regard for our population.
Yeah.
And so it's easy for somebody from Toronto to come in and say exactly what you said. Hell, I can buy in a really nice tree-lined old area a mansion that has 3 chopped up units in it and convert it back into one, and I can buy it for $800,000 or $900,000, spend a couple $100,000 on it, and all of a sudden in Toronto that costs 2.3 million for the same thing.
Yeah. That's
so,
just one of the points. It's just one of the points that I'm making in the submission. And some of the other things when we discuss it, what you'll see, Dan, is I didn't see in any of the delegations or even in the staff report any consideration of some of the factors that we've raised and some of the consequences. So we'll see whether or not, I've already told Anna and Paul that this is almost too little too late. The horse is out of the barn. They've already been given direction to implement this thing, and the only issue for this committee meeting is this how we should implement it? And well, that's fine. We can say no, and here are all the reasons why. But in the submission I've drafted, I've also asked them to reconsider proceeding at all. And that's not really on the table, but I'm just hoping we can persuade them to take a second look.
Yes, and I think everybody's not. They understand exactly what you said. Nobody's deluded to think that they're not going to try to ram this through at this point.
That's right.
But I think it's our duty to at least take a stab, if nothing else. Yeah. So I think we're all on the same page as what you just said. That's for sure. Hamilton has become such an NDP stronghold, and the councillors.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Is that Aaron?
Yep, that's Aaron on the line. Hi, Aaron. Good to see you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
No.
Yes. Can you hear us? I don't think you can hear us.
Aaron? No, he's not hearing us.
No. Huh. I'll just try emailing him and letting him know.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, now we can hear you. Can you hear us, Aaron?
Okay, how are you doing?
We're doing well. We could hear you the whole time. You just couldn't hear us, but I'm glad you found it. I was about to email you.
Hi, Aaron. It's Dan Casuccio. I'm on the line. I'm not sure if anybody else besides Joe and myself were on at this point.
I thought you were supposed to be retired, Aaron.
Aaron, yeah. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm good. As far as Aaron being retired, I can speak to that. We won't let him retire.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Okay, I'm done after this planning committee meeting.
Oh boy, Aaron is one of a kind, and in Hamilton we really appreciate him. And the shoes are too big to fill by anybody, and this is what the problem is.
Yeah, I know. I know.
I'm surprised we don't have a couple others on the phone already. I think we're after 4 now.
Yeah, it may be like Starleaf is a different thing. They may be downloading and installing and all that kind of thing. I got on a little early because it was new to me, and it's no problem to upload and stuff, but it just takes a few minutes. So maybe that's what's holding them up. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if Ivan was going to join us. I know Anya said she wasn't available. Oh, there's Anna.
Hello, sorry about that. The laptop I wanted to use with my webcam is currently at 11% update, so that always happens right when I need it, unfortunately. So I'm just on my cell phone, but it should be fine.
Good. Well, right now there's just 4 of us on the line, and I'm not sure if you expected anyone else to join us.
We did extend the invitation to Ivan and Dan as well as Anya. Ivan and Dan didn't get back to me, unfortunately.
Dan's on.
She couldn't.
Dan's on.
Oh, you
And
are? Okay. I can't see anyone I can't see who's on my cell phone. I might just log on my computer as well.
Okay. I thought I responded yes when to click on the box yesterday that I'd be in.
Oh, you responded to the invitation. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm here anyways.
Perfect. Good. Thank you for joining us.
Sure. If we don't think anybody else is coming on, we should just get into it maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So, Anna, I've sent a draft of what I propose to submit. I know Aaron has it, and you have it. I copied Paul as well. Those were the only addresses I had. I didn't get one to Dan. If you could forward it to Dan, that would be appreciated. And I wasn't sure, if there were specific things you wanted to discuss beyond the submission. But if we're going to discuss the submission, then what I propose is that I just take you to it and summarize what's in it. I didn't expect you to read it. I've been working on it this afternoon and just got it to you a few minutes ago. So is that okay?
That sounds perfect.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I've already had this discussion briefly with Dan, but when I spoke with you previously, Anna, I think you understood, and certainly I understood, that as far as moving ahead with the pilot project goes, that decision was made by council. The horse is out of the barn. The purpose of this submission is to try to mitigate the impact of implementation, to provide some constructive criticism. But I've also included in the submission the suggestion or submission that they really should be reconsidering moving forward with it at this time. And so I'll explain why as I move through this submission. Really, it's best summarized in the second paragraph. First paragraph is just an introduction to who or what HDAA is, and then what I say in that first paragraph is that this pilot project should be reconsidered because the current implementation proposal Well, well, somebody's got something going on out there. Will adversely affect not just HDAA members, but also tenants by triggering substantial rent increases, by triggering a loss of affordable rental housing units for tenants, and by encouraging bad landlords to take their operation. There's some double feedback going on. So I'll just continue.
I just added to my, I add myself and it wouldn't mute properly, but I just came out.
Okay. Okay. But it will encourage bad landlords to take their operations under the radar screen. And in addition, the cost of the program will ultimately result in added cost to taxpayers, and both in the context of social services for evicted tenants and a serious miscalculation of the estimated program costs. So that's what's covered in the rest of the submission. In terms of adverse effect on HDAA members, I point out that they're already covered by the RTA, by property standards, by building, fire, electrical codes, among other things. And this is going to be an additional regulatory and administrative burden and a punitive financial burden. I think you've seen the schedule of license fees, and when you sit down and work it out, including the ESA fees, it's over $1,000 a property. So, that's the adverse effect on landlords. I didn't go beyond that.
Can I just get clarification?
Yeah.
Is that $1,000 per property or $1,000 per rental unit?
$1,000 per property, Aaron. $1,000 per property.
Okay, maybe I misread that then. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm just. Yeah, there is an additional user fee per unit. But the rest, it appears that it's per property. In any case, the math is big. It really is. It may not seem like much, but when I get into the adverse impact to tenants, you'll see how it works. So when you look at the average of $1,000 per property, we had a similar situation in the city of Waterloo, and they introduced a licensing bylaw very similar to this. And we cautioned the tenant groups, we cautioned the city that the imposition of these charges would result in significant rent increases because municipal charges are subject to a pass-through for an above guideline rent increase under the provisions of the Residential Tenancies Act. They, of course, ignored the landlords, and what happened was the bylaw was passed and landlords filed above guideline rent increase applications, and there was, in that case, an increase of 6% above the annual rent increase guideline that was awarded, and I'll attach a copy of that decision. It's quite brief, but it's quite clear that the decision, or that the tenants basically ate the cost. And then I go on to say that the fee schedule in Hamilton, it will mean an average $250 increase for a 4-unit property or a $1,000 increase for a single unit. And then you can do the math on 2 or 3 units. But that's a substantial increase, and I've suggested that that can result in economic eviction of tenants, but the costs are going to be passed through. It's not. I've heard, and I put this submission, or I make the statement in here somewhere. The councillors would say, "Oh, well, you shouldn't pass it on to tenants." Well, councillors pass their costs on to tenants. The advocacy groups pass their costs on, not to tenants, to taxpayers. The advocacy groups pass their disbursements and costs on, and you can't expect anything different from landlords. And so that is a factor that doesn't appear to have been considered by the staff in their initial report, or by the planning committee, or by council when they made their decision to go ahead. But it is a substantial increase that ultimately will be borne by tenants. So that's the first adverse impact. The second is just the loss of affordable rental housing. when you run up the costs that an operator incurs, and keep in mind we already have a 2021 rent freeze. We have numerous tenants who owe thousands of dollars of arrears who haven't paid it. There's no hope to collect that judgment. We've had the eviction suspension now lifted and a tremendous backlog at the LTB. Few landlords really would find it palatable to be getting into the business of, being a small landlord. In particular, I don't say it in here, but in particular in the city of Hamilton. So there are landlords who will be looking to get out of the business because of the costs, the aggravation, the headaches, and one way is bankruptcy, but assuming that doesn't come into play, small landlords, they'll take back one or more rental units for members of their own family. Why operate at a loss? So there goes rental units that tenants would otherwise be living in. Or, as I said to Dan before you guys joined, it would be very attractive for a landlord to sell to a purchaser, and it would be attractive to the purchaser to take that duplex or triplex or even a fourplex, convert it back to a single-family residential use. So. And they can do that exercising purchaser's own use, and there goes 1, 2, 3, or 4 rental units out of the pool. And the way that single family home prices have increased, it's a very attractive option. So again, these things that doesn't seem to have been considered by the committee, by the staff, or certainly by council. And then underground operations, and this is something you'll have to think about, but I've said it's naive to think that there aren't bad actors out there who will further fly under the radar screen when they have an additional layer of penalties, punitive measures that they're expected to comply with. And they're already flying under the radar screen now, but this gives them a greater incentive and it pushes them even deeper. And that's just not a good outcome. I know they'll say, well, that's why we're doing this. Well, the current laws that are in place already do that. And if you haven't got them now, just think of how likely it is you're going to get them when you give them an incentive to go further down. So that's it on adverse impact to tenants. And then the added financial cost to the city. They say that there will be full cost recovery. In reality, there won't, and we've seen that in other municipalities. And, this program, it's supposed to be 2 years. Well, the 2 years doesn't even start until after the education period and after the registration period, when it basically starts when the last registration is made. That could take years. And then the 2 years starts. So we're looking, I think, at a minimum of 4 years, and that's what I suggest in this submission. And over that 4 years, cost overruns are virtually inevitable. And if they run over for 4 years, and the prospect is, do we take this out of the city budget or do we pass it on to landlords who are already experiencing high fees? Then that means even greater rent increases for the tenants through the AGIs. And, it's just, I don't say this in the submission, but the overall, it looks as though it will be the taxpayers who share a considerable burden of the cost of this program. And again, what I suggest at the end is, they should revisit implementation of the pilot project, but I just noticed looking at this, I say if the submission is rejected, then the schedule of license fees should be revisited and substantially revised downward to avoid the harsh consequences for landlord and tenant stakeholders. And one option for that is for the city to subsidize the cost of the program. And if they recognize that it will adversely affect tenants financially, then it won't be palatable for them to say, well, then we'll just subsidize the program out of the city budget. So I'm just hoping to paint a picture of disincentive to go ahead with it at this time. But if they go ahead with it, to at least give them reasons why they should reduce the amount of licensing fees. I didn't comment about the rollout program because, it does look like a minimum of 4 years. And I think we're all, especially us older folks, remember that, federal income tax was introduced as a temporary measure. Rent controls were introduced as a temporary measure. This pilot project isn't a temporary measure. This is going to be entrenched throughout the city if they feel that it's going to be profitable. It's going to, there'll be empire building at City Hall, more staff, more cars, more inspectors, all that stuff. It won't end. So the fact that it'll be limited to these wards for at least 4 years, perhaps longer, I wouldn't want to interfere with that. I wouldn't want to be saying, well, you should introduce it right away, because that just means the rollout to the rest of the city will happen that much more quickly. So that's a summary of all of it. I know it's a lot to absorb, but those were my takeaways when I looked through this material and when I thought about what it is that we can hope to achieve at this meeting. I mean, the purpose of our call today was to talk about your thoughts and anything further that that you want to put before them. So I'll turn it over to you, Anna, and the others on the call.
Well, I think Aaron and Dan probably have more knowledgeable input potentially than I do, so I'll have one of them provide their input first.
Sorry, I had my internet cut out, so I joined by phone. Joe, do we have information on whether London ever got to the levels of licensing they anticipated?
We do. We'd have to go back and pull different reports. But what I can tell you is they operated at a substantial loss and still are in terms of cost recovery. They're not recovering their costs. They have upped the fees over the years, but in London, the fees were, I think, $57 a property to begin with, and that actually wouldn't be enough to trigger an above guideline rent increase. It wouldn't meet the threshold. The $1,000 per property that's proposed here, and we're just talking about 4 units or less, would easily trigger that threshold. And citing London as the main thing we could cite about London is the fact that they operated at a loss because they didn't charge enough, and I just didn't want to go there.
Right. I was wondering if there's any way of commenting that even after so many years, there are still landlords operating under the radar, or is that not something we want to say? Well,
I mean, it's accurate, but then we have to say, okay, well, how many and where, or which landlords are you talking about? If they're operating under the radar, how do we know? So I left it more as the statement similar to what you hear from politicians, is you'd be naive to think that there aren't. If they go back to their own staff will tell them there are people operating under the radar. And right. Just make the point. Remember, this is a submission that if it's too long, and already I'm worried about its length, but if it's too long, it won't get read by members of the planning committee. And, we need to make our points quickly and briefly. And I just worry about expanding the points too much. And then it gets lost.
Okay.
Hi, Ivan. Oh, we can't hear you, but I don't know how much of the call you caught, and I'm hoping you can forward the draft to Ivan as well. Keep in mind, this is a draft that I I prepared this afternoon. It's a first draft. I have to go back in, correct grammar. I may reword things, but what I wanted to get on paper before this call was just the main ideas that I was thinking of in terms of a submission.
So is this just going to be a written submission?
It's a written submission. I want to get on the list to make a presentation. I emailed the clerk, the contact person, never heard back. So I'm still awaiting some confirmation that I'd be able to make to at least appear and respond to any questions they may have. And otherwise, I would just quickly summarize, just as I did here, the main points that are in the written submission. But it's important to get your written submission on the record.
Yeah. I think both are important, the written submission getting on the record, but I think when somebody's actually in front of them talking, they find it harder to ignore them.
Yeah, so, I agree. Maybe that's why they've ignored me to this point.
I know that sometimes she is a little behind with sending in confirmations. So I'm sure she's probably seen it, or she's going through email and checking. And I sent her an email as well, just confirming that she did get it. So hopefully you'll hear back within a day or two from her. But I have had it where she responds the day before, even though I sent it in a few days.
Okay.
So
well,
it's not unusual.
Well, I know you're on the list, Anna, so I'd be obliged if you could just email her and let her know that HDAA would like to make a presentation in addition to the written submission, and ask that I be put on the list to make a delegation.
Perfect. And I'm assuming you've already emailed. Have you emailed? Are we going to be emailing this letter on behalf of yourself, or will you be emailing the letter?
No, I was going to email the submission directly, and then with a CC to HDAA.
Okay, perfect.
And that'll probably go out tomorrow morning, unless I can find some time tonight to get it out.
Okay, perfect. Ivan, I don't know if you had any thoughts that you're looking at it, or Dan, if you've thought of anything yourself.
Yeah. So can you hear me now or no?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. I logged out to try and reconnect and get I don't know. Sometimes I have these issues, but anyway, I'm very confident, I'm sure, in what Joe has drafted is good for us. I'll read what I just got, and if I have any other comments, I'll share that with the group. The only thing I want to add, just to reinforce, I think, a point that Joe was touching upon, because I joined the meeting late. In the previous planning committee meeting, one of the reasons I think it ended up being, in essence, unanimous was, for example, Julie Partridge, one of the counselors, was sensitive to the idea that there would be any cost to taxpayers, and so that is an opportunity for us. If Joe makes some of the arguments I just heard, that definitely will get the attention of not only her but other counselors, I am sure. And so I'm just reinforcing. I like what Joe was saying, because they're going to be concerned about that. She was concerned. They somehow reworked the motion so that there was no deficit, that it would be revenue neutral, and she came on board. But that doesn't mean the issue is resolved, because the experience has been in other jurisdictions, as I heard in London and elsewhere. They need to realize, just because you think you're going into this with it being revenue neutral, it's likely it won't be. And so I think I just reinforcing that's a good argument. That is something that some of the counselors will be sensitive to.
Okay, then I'm going to just add a sentence in there, and I will make reference to the fact that London's bylaw started as revenue neutral, and they ended up they ended up subsidizing it to the tune of millions of dollars, and they can check with London, and that will be confirmed. And I haven't canvassed with other municipalities, but anecdotally, it's the same result, that the city subsidizes the cost of these programs.
And what I like about that statement is, and I like the idea that you're going to maybe add a sentence about that, is that that's just factual. I think sometimes without the benefit of experience in other jurisdictions or municipalities, you can say, oh, we think this isn't going to be revenue neutral. We think it's going to be this. You think this, you think that. Doesn't really matter. What actually did happen in other municipalities, that is going to, I think, resonate with these councillors. So I think adding a sentence about that, I'm just trying to go after those councillors that might be sort of in the middle, because this is clearly being driven by a couple of counselors in those wards with a huge student population. But at the very same meeting, whether it's planning committee or the actual council, Acorn and other organizations are absolutely going to be pushing for this to be across the entire city. And so we've got to try and go in on those cracks in terms of the support that council might give that. And I just think that's one of those opportunities. So,
okay, I'll get that in there.
Again, if I have any other comments or issues, I'll add. But what I like about this is asking Joe to help us out with this. And thank you very much, Joe, for helping us out with this. You certainly do give us the benefit of your experience working with other associations or landlords in other jurisdictions and what's happened there. And some of us kind of feel that, we're not going to be that different in terms of they're probably going to implement something at some point. I don't know that we have the benefit of a strong argument to stop it, but we have an obligation to try and make the argument and make it difficult and maybe even stop it. You don't give up the fight without actually,
that's right,
making the argument. And I think our members would expect us to do that. So I certainly, and I think we do appreciate your help with this, Joe.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that's unanimous. We all appreciate it.
Yeah,
I agree.
Okay, any other thoughts on the submission itself?
Did we resolve the part about doing it in person, or is it just going to be a written submission?
We're trying to get there in person. I've already asked to connect, but I haven't even received an acknowledgement on my email. But I'm sure that they'll respond to Anna, and I've asked Anna to let them know that HDAA wishes to make a submission, and if you could provide her with my contact information as well, Anna, then even CC me on the email, then we'll be connected. And then if they reject it, at least they can't say, oh, Mr. Hoffer's email must have gone to my trash because she's getting your emails. I always worry about that.
Yeah,
I've heard it before.
I wonder if some of the counselors might know you already from some of the past delegations, and whether she might know you herself. But I doubt she would ignore someone on purpose. Hopefully not. But I have emailed her as well, and I'm sure she'll respond to one of us. Hopefully.
Okay. Good. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I do have to run to another thing, but I will try to get something to you, like more of a final draft for your review. And once I get your approval, I'll just, put it on the letterhead nicely and all that kind of stuff, make sure it's properly formatted, and then I'll email it off. Anna, if you have the emails of individual members of the planning committee, I would appreciate that, because then I would CC them with it as well. Okay.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
And if not, even if I have the names of the members on the committee, usually you can source their emails on the website, and I'll get them from my assistant Rachel if I can't get them through.
Perfect.
All right. And it's a contested, it's pretty hotly contested, and there's been media attention to it. So I'm assuming that members of the media will see the written submission, which is also important. they never like to treat landlords as good guys, but you never know. They may put some pressure to rethink the approach that they're taking.
We would hope so. I think our delegation as well covers a lot of the points that you're making too. So hopefully having both of us, especially talk to the cost issues, actually get some of them to pause and reconsider. That would be the most optimistic and fruitful thing to happen from our delegations. But whether that happens or not, well, I guess we'll see on Tuesday.
Okay.
I would just add real quick, because I know everyone's got to go. I think we're kind of fortunate. Middle of September, there weren't any that I'm aware of media reports about wild partying in those wards, like there is usually every year. And I saw a report about a 500-person party in Kingston. But other than that, because if there had been a report about partying, we would have been sunk. But so we're kind of fortunate that sometimes a non-story kind of helps us, because if there had been a story, we would have had a harder time making some of these arguments, I think, unfortunately. So that's a good thing. So finding some positives here.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Aaron, Dan, I'm guessing you guys don't have anything else to say?
I'm good. I know Joe's hit on all the you can't make a book out of this, but all the main points are there. And
exactly.
One thing I just want to add is we know that we're fighting an uphill battle, but to be on record, to not to be smart about it, but just say I told you so in a year or two from now is very important as well, because the fight's going to go on. And I think this is an important submission because looking forward, maybe new counselors, which I'm expecting some new counselors might see that, hey, maybe things should be done different. They were already told this and they didn't listen to it in previous year.
Great point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for putting the submission together. We really appreciate it, Joe.
Okay, you're welcome.
I guess
Thank
that's
you.
it. Thank you.
All right. We'll see you
Thanks,
later.
everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.